someone that you all know very well. He was a basketball player, but he is also a tireless long-distance runner. He's a truly feminist, progressive, and pro-European leader that has brought up hope to Spain, Europe, and to the social democratic family. But he's also the man that he has proved everybody in the past months that nothing is impossible and that we must never give up. So, con todos vosotros, el secretario general del PSOE.
Please welcome now the Secretary General and the President of the Government of Spain, Mr. Pedro Sanchez.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Lisbon. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, friends. Thank you, comrades. Thank you so much, comrades. Now, Fernando Pessoa once said, dear Antonio, that politics could not be reduced to a mere battle. It could not be reduced to a reflection on how to obtain power, on how to come to power. And Antonio Costa, as the Prime Minister of Portugal, thanks also to the push forward by Portuguese socialists, has proved that coming to power is not as important as what is done when one is in government, what is done to transform the lives of citizens in Portugal. Your party, Antonio, has shown with your path forward, your struggle, that an alternative pathway is possible, where you have economic growth with social justice, where you have social cohesion with meeting with the growth and stability pact and improving public accounts. You are an example for our socialist family and, of course, for Spanish socialism too. So you have the support, the affection of we Spanish socialists, Antonio. You also have the affection and support of European socialists, and next year you will have the support and the affection of the Portuguese people because you will be elected Prime Minister once again. And so today, I should like to say that inspired by Portuguese socialism, we will be putting forward our general budgets in Spain with three aims within those budgets. First, we're going to have socially sustainable budgets. We're going to rebuild the welfare state and drive up average wage. We're also going to be betting on environmental sustainability with an energy transition to cleaner energy. And we're also going to be betting on financial sustainability, cutting our public debt and pushing Spain towards a new model away from the struggle that the country had faced under the previous administration. That is what we are going to be doing in Spain, Antonio. Dear friends, I wish also to thank you, and thank in particular Mr. Frans Timmermans for his political commitment. On many occasions, Frans has said that it's been an honor to be the candidate for the whole Socialist Party in the upcoming European elections in May 2019. But Frans, the honor is ours. It is our honor to have you as a candidate. It's the honor of the whole European socialist family. Because as Vice President of the European Commission, Frans has focused on equality at work for men and women, to fight against the gender pay gap with women suffering across the European Union. Your commitment to the circular economy, to Agenda 2030, and to ensuring that the Sustainable Development Goals are met, to fight for representative democracy and fairness across the whole of the European Union. That is what Mr. Frans Timmermans has done. Now, to Spain, to Spaniards. When Europe is mentioned, well, there's a smile on our face. That's simply the situation, because in 2018, friends, we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Spanish Constitution. 40 years ago, friends, we would imagine the future of Spain. We'd think of our integration, our joining the European Union. Democracy, social justice, freedom. For 40 years in Spain under Franco's dictatorship, there was none of that. And so we'd smile to think of these values. Looking ahead to the European elections in May 2019, in our campaign, we must remember to have pride in what we've built over the past few decades. That's a great Europe. Today, young people can travel from Spain to Portugal to France to Holland with no passport. Young people can buy a plane ticket and travel at the drop of a hat from Madrid to Amsterdam for 20 or 30 euros thanks to the work of the European Union. Today we can go to any supermarket and buy a product and see every ingredient listed, information on its nutrition, on when it's going to expire. That's thanks to the fact that within the framework of the European Union we have built the rights of consumers. We have a European healthcare system. When we leave the European Union, if we run into trouble, we can go to any consulate of any European member state and ask for help. We funded infrastructure, airports connecting citizens across our continent thanks to the solidarity of all the member states. We have an Erasmus program. In short, we built a great Europe. If it weren't for the European Union, well, we'd simply have to come about with the European Union. If it didn't exist, we just have to build it. I touched on our European healthcare system, the Erasmus program, consumer rights. This is about building collective values to face down individualism. It's about bringing together a great society where the principles of the French Revolution, of freedom, fraternity and equality, when all of that is present, that is the Europe that we will be defending at the upcoming elections, with a positive, realistic but positive outlook, bearing in mind everything we've achieved so far. And, comrades, it's true that Brexit, authoritarianism, I don't like the word populism, it's authoritarianism, that's the right word for it. Renationalizing all of these different phenomena that have come across, of sidelining people, turning people inward, that's something that needs to get us thinking, not just criticizing these leaders, and of course that's something we have to do. We have to combat their ideologies. But all of this ought us to lead us to think that not all is well. But it's not enough to say, this isn't right. We can see that there are different symptoms cropping up in Brexit, authoritarianism, the rise of the far right in Europe. All of that is part of the fact that all is not well in Europe. Citizens believe that we as leaders must do much more to resolve their problems, to meet their needs. If you look at society as a whole, not just in Europe, global politics is facing huge challenges. Challenges that require joint work. We need to jointly address climate change, inequality, exclusion, a lack of opportunities, the precariousness of young people in finding decent work, the fact that they don't have a decent wage, domestic violence, gender violence, the lack of equality between men and women, the fact that the whole of the global order is being called into question, that the multilateral order is being called into question. We need fair international trade. We need opportunities for the working and middle class, looking ahead to what's going to happen to their sons and daughters in fear. We need to respond to these people and say that all of these challenges may also, alongside the digital revolution, turn into an opportunity for progress for the majority in society. We ought not to turn inward. We ought not to fear as a consequence of these challenges with the rise of authoritarianism in Europe. What we need to do is be freed of our chains and say to the European Union and to our citizens that social democracy is ready to move forward, to make progress and to work more effectively to face up to the challenges that we are currently up against. That is where the work is to be done. That is where we need to give a boost to the European order. Here is where social democracy can step in and provide a future for the construction of Europe. If I had to say in a sentence what our political aim ought to be within social democracy for the upcoming elections in May 2019, it's very clear to me. We need to give the whole of European society a new social contract. That's what we need, a new social contract. Yes, it's as simple as that. This is something I saw in my parents when I was 15. I saw that my parents grew up in a society, in Spanish society, where if you studied, if you went to university, then you'd get a job. And then if you had a job, you'd have a decent wage, where you'd be able to comfortably make a living, cover your needs, and ensure that your family was protected. And if you paid your taxes, then you'd have a strong welfare state, good public healthcare, good public education. And after many years working, when you would have finished up your working life, you'd retire and you'd have a decent pension. And that social contract, as a result of the economic crash and the consequences over the past 10 years, that is a social contract that has disappeared. If you studied, you get a job. Well, that's simply no longer the case. You ought to ask young people if you don't believe me. That guarantee that if you'd work, then you'd have a decent wage. That's not there. That guarantee has disappeared. The guarantee that if you'd pay your taxes, well, you can see that there are people not paying their taxes. And as a consequence, the welfare state has fallen apart. So you can work for years and years and years. And when you retire, and the age of retirement is constantly being pushed back because of the reforms, then the issue is that you're not going to have the retirement that you worked for. In my view, we need a social contract with 5 pillars. First, education. Second, the labour market. Third, how to finance and sustain the welfare state. Fourth, something key, something cross-cutting, the environment, climate change, and fighting it. And 5, defending to the core the democratic values of each and every one of our member states across the European Union. Those are the 5 pillars of the social contract that we ought to be putting forward. And that is something that we are working on in Spain. Over the past 6 months, the 6 months that we've been in government, we're going to be extending public health care and public education. We're going to reverse the cuts to spending in education carried out by the previous administration. We're going to be giving scholarships and grants to families that are not as well off. That's what we're doing for education in Spain. And there is a clear focus on improving public education. We're also going to be putting up the minimum wage. But not only that, we're going to be doing away with many of the negative policies in terms of workers' rights. For instance, people working for temp agencies. And we're going to be defending the role of women in the workplace. We're going to do away with the gender pay gap, and we're going to be passing a law for pay equality, wage equality between men and women in the workplace. As for the welfare state, here we need to think long and hard about tax reform, looking at public income that we have, how we're going to fund our welfare state, and who's going to be paying the taxes into that system. We need to be defending the self-employed, we need to be defending SMEs, but big corporations have to start to pay the taxes that they owe. Now, the environment. The government of Spain has been absolutely clear on this point. We're going to be applying and implementing the Paris agreements. We're going to be fighting against climate change. That is one of the key core aspects of our policy, a part of our work in the public field. And then there's the issue of our democratic values. This is something that we are very clear on. This is something that other parties in Spain seem not to have understood. You can't say that you're pro-European, but then use non-European values to try and take power in some parts of our country. And I say this because this is everything that we want to do in Spain. We want to write that social contract and have it apply across our country, but we cannot do this without the support of Europe. We cannot do this if we do not look at implementing policies around that social contract in education, not just the Erasmus program, but science, innovation, research, all of this on a European scale. If we're not talking about the European labour market and ensuring that we have a social pillar that it's implemented with a European fund against unemployment, especially in times of economic crisis. That's something we need to see in our continent. If Europe turns inward, if Europe does not reaffirm its commitment in fighting against climate change and implementing the Paris agreements, if Europe cannot face up and battle the authoritarian forces that want to break up our joint project and question our global multilateral order that we're defending, that's what the social democratic family is defending in Europe. It will be very difficult to sign that social contract, no matter how hard we work. Social governments in the member states, if we do not have the support from the whole of the European social democratic family and the whole of the European Union, it's going to be very difficult. And that's why it's so important, Franz, that you be the next president of the European Commission. And so all of this said, friends, there are many causes that we must work on: gender equality, climate change, the fight against inequality, against precariousness, creating jobs, and ensuring that we bear young people in mind in all these aspects in all our countries. These are many different causes to work on. People always say that things are difficult for social democracy, my friends. But when has it ever been easy? That's my question. When? The time has come to fight, yes. But it's not about building fronts, coalitions. It's about mobilizing society, moderate society that knows that its progress of each of its societies and citizens is based on basic social democratic values, such as living together, defending our rights, our liberties, and moderation in our politics. So Franz, Antonio, my social democratic family, I can guarantee Spanish socialists will be there. And we're going to be contributing to the great and necessary victory of our social democratic family across Europe. Thank you.